What's going on, everybody? Nick from the Sound Coop here, and I got a fun little guitar shootout for you guys today. I've officially had this Murphy Lab Jr. for a year. I made a first impressions video on this about a year ago. I'll put a link to that down below if you guys want to check that out. I've really fallen in love with the whole one pickup guitar thing. I never would have thought this would have happened as a longtime Strat guy. Never would have figured the whole one pickup thing would have worked so well or would be so much fun, but this Murphy Lab has completely changed my opinion on that sort of thing. A couple of weeks back, I had a comment in my first impressions video, and the poster was basically pointing out that the price range on juniors from like cheapest to most expensive is absolutely wild. They described it as price gouging, which I thought was an interesting way to phrase it. They pointed out that in 1970, they bought a 58 Junior, which is what this is like a remake of, for 250 bucks. That's crazy. Those must have been the days. But generally speaking, I kind of agree with the commenter. The prices on these things are wild. So this Murphy Lab came from Wildwood. This is a 58. These things are somewhere between $6 and like $7.5 grand, depending on the time of year that you look. You know, if you're buying them brand new, that's basically what the cost is. It's crazy, absolutely wild. If you're going a step down from Murphy Lab, the VOSs from Gibson are about 3,500 bucks. Stepping outside of Gibson, the next step down from that is sort of rock and roll relics. And it's kind of weird. The rock and roll relics a couple years back used to be a little over 1,000 bucks. Now they're like over 3 grand. It's pretty wild when you think about it. I think the bottom line Gibson is like the DC Tribute, which is a little over 1,000 bucks brand new. I went and played one. I was not happy with the quality at all. There was no way I could justify spending 1,000 bucks on that thing. If you go down into the $400 range, you can get those Harley Bentons. I've heard mixed reviews. You know, our buddy Glenn from Spectre Sound Studios, you know, Screaming Glenn, you know, he's always yelling. I'm sure you guys know who I'm talking about. Sometimes Glenn's raving about the Harley Bentons, and sometimes he's saying that they're less than adequate. So I don't really know what to think about those, and I haven't gotten my hands on one yet. But it's pretty wild to think that you can go from like 400 bucks all the way up to 7K. Now, I recently acquired myself an inexpensive Junior. For reference, again, these things are somewhere between 6 and 7.5 grand brand new from Wildwood. They're a little cheaper from other companies. I got this one used for 4,500 bucks, which I think is a steal. I get it, it's ridiculously expensive, but for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to consider these Murphy Labs 7 grand. So when I talk about getting an inexpensive Junior, I got this Girt Brothers Junior for 700 bucks. This was also used. I think I'm the third owner. I think these things go for about $1,000 brand new, but this is a really solid guitar. There's not a lot of differences between this and the Murphy Lab. You know, I'm going to do a shootout of these guitars and kind of compare them for you guys today. I hadn't really known about Girt Brothers until I checked out a video by Alex Radsby. I'm going to put a link to his video below. He put out a video that kind of convinced me to try one of these things out. The main reason why I wanted to try one of these is when I went and tried the Gibson DC Tribute, I didn't like the neck profile. It was really thin. I didn't like the frets. They were thinner style frets. The nut that was in the Gibson DC Tribute definitely needed some work or needed to be changed out. I really didn't want to get into all that. So this thing was not only under my $1,000 price range, but it had a big chunky 50s style neck, which is exactly what I wanted. That's what my Murphy Lab has, and I've grown really accustomed to it. I really wanted a guitar that played as close to the Murphy Lab as possible. And the reason why I got this is I put a 56 Mojotone Quiet Coil in my Murphy Lab. I put out a video on that. I'll link that below also. And then about 2 weeks later, Lawler dropped his version of a noiseless P90, and I love Lawler pickups. So I kind of want to do a pickup shootout, and that's actually what I'm going to do. I put a 56 Mojotone Quiet Coil in this. So both this guitar and my Murphy Lab have the same pickup installed. But what I did was I ordered a Lawler DC90, which is their version of a noiseless P90, and I'm going to shoot out the Mojotone Quiet Coil versus the Lawler noiseless in this guitar in the coming weeks. So stay tuned for that video. But today, we're going to shoot out this guitar against the Murphy Lab, and we're going to get into all the similarities, all the differences. I'm just going to lay this out right now. If this guitar is 7 times the price, this guitar is not 7 times the guitar. So for those of you that don't want to spend this kind of money on a Junior, I'm going to show you why this might be a decent alternative for you. But also for you guys that have the money to spend on a Murphy Lab, I'm going to explain to you all the reasons why this thing is worth every penny. So anyway, let's get into it. Okay, this is YouTube. Normally I would get to the sound examples first, but these guitars have a couple of small differences, and I think it's important to consider the sound examples in light of those differences. So let's just go over them really quick. The first noticeable difference is the weight. This one's a ½ pound heavier. This one is 7.57 pounds. This one is 6.96 pounds. So this one's just under 7 pounds. This one is just over 7.5 pounds. So roughly a ½ pound difference, not a big deal. But the one thing I did notice is this one feels heavier in the body. This one feels lighter in the body. The neck feels like it's relatively the same weight. And so to me, the way this works out is this just feels more balanced. It's a ½ pound heavier, but the body and the neck are perfectly balanced. This thing is just a little bit neck heavy. Now, 2-piece body, 1-piece body, I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but maybe that's why. So I think let's actually start at the headstocks. I think this will be a better way to go about it. The first thing that I noticed was the angle of the headstock here is different. This one is a steeper angle. So this angle here is more shallow. I don't really know that that makes all that much of a difference. Also, this headstock is like maybe a ½ inch taller, just from the nut going up to the top, about a ½ inch taller in comparison. Not a big deal. I did talk to Dan, who's the owner of Girt Brothers Guitars. Really nice guy. He answered a whole bunch of questions for me. This is a 1-piece neck. So 1-piece neck, 2-piece body, 1-piece body. I'm assuming they both have wings, but I can't see any marks where they glued the wings on either of the guitars. So I don't know, maybe this thing doesn't have wings. I can't really tell. Now moving down the neck. The only real problem with this Girt Brothers that I had was the nut that it came with was plastic, and that's not a big deal, but it wasn't cut very well. So the action between, like, I would say the first fret and like fret 5 or 6 was really not great. Once you got above that, the action was wonderful. So I kind of knew it needed to have the nut slots filed a little deeper. I tried to do it myself. I got 5 out of 6 done properly, but that 6th one, something went wrong, and I think the high point got centered somewhere inside of the nut. So I actually gave this to a luthier buddy of mine. He swapped out the plastic nut for a bone nut. It absolutely changed this guitar. The action below the 5th fret is now perfect. I wouldn't say it plays quite as well as the Murphy Lab, but this thing is 90% of the way there in terms of like action. So that's good. Medium jumbo frets. These ones might be a little bit taller. I don't know. I think they're pretty darn close. I can't really tell a massive difference. Now here's one other thing that's significantly different. If you look at the neck joint where it meets the body, I don't know if you can see this. I'll get you guys an up close picture, but the neck basically sits just above the flat plane of the body. So the flat plane of the neck joins the body perfectly, and so those two planes meet. So the fretboard is only sticking above the body height, however tall the fretboard is, 1/16 of an inch or whatever. And so what that means is the difference between the actual height of the body and the strings, very small. It's really low. The strings are low to the body. I really love this. Now, the Girt Brothers is not like that. The Girt Brothers is sitting, let's say the flat plane of the neck, not the fretboard, but the neck is sitting, I'd say a 1/16 of an inch above the flat plane of the body, and then the height of the fretboard, maybe another 1/16 of an inch, probably less. I'm probably getting these 1/16 of an inch measurements wrong, but close enough. So, this thing is sitting like maybe 1/8 of an inch off the body, the actual fretboard, and that just means that the strings are a little further away from the body. Now, again, not a massive difference, but when I think about why these two guitars might have different playabilities, the first thing I think of is A, the taller frets, and B, the fact that this thing is just sitting a little farther off the body. Now, of course, the height from the body doesn't affect the action. It's just sort of where you rest your hand on the guitar or where you rest your arm on the guitar in relation to your strumming. I just love the way this one feels. And this is, again, pretty minor. I think these guitars are, they're within 10% is sort of the way that I look at it. So I think that sort of accounts for any differences in action. Like I said, same pickup, Mojotone 56 Quiet Coil, Mojotone 56 Quiet Coil. I did a shootout against the stock Gibson pickup with this Mojotone Quiet Coil, and they sounded darn near identical. I'll put a link to that down below. If you have a stock noisy Gibson pickup, this Quiet Coil is a really good option, no routing required. So I put the same pickup in this guitar. We're going to compare them and see how big of a difference it makes. The last difference is, I think this one has a Music City bridge, typical wraparound. It doesn't have any saddles, but it looks to me like it's a Music City because just the way that the angle's cut. I've seen a bunch of those bridges before, and that's what it looks like. Maybe Gibson is just manufacturing these things better now, but I have no intonation problems on this guitar at all, and I haven't had any intonation problems since it showed up. This guitar basically showed up perfect. So as far as this guitar, this one has a Golden Age bridge. This one has the typical like lightning bolt style raised saddles. This one also has no intonation problems. I've had a couple of Gibson specials before, and they had like wraparound style bridges from Gibson with the lightning bolts. The intonation was terrible. I've never been able to get one of those to work right. So both of these guitars, great intonation, no problems at all whatsoever. So I think that's everything. Obviously the electronics are different. I got a Bumblebee cap in here. There's an orange drop cap in here. I'm not even going to use the volume pot or tone pot. So we're just going to be basically coming straight out of the pickup for all of our sound tests. And now that we've gone through all the differences, I think let's check out some sound examples. If you hang around till after the sound examples, I'll sort of do an overview in terms of, what I think, is the difference in terms of overall quality. And I'll also sort of get into the relic work. Like I think the nicest thing about the Murphy Lab is the relic work is unreal. And the relic work on this is not terrible, but they don't even compare. And for the money you're spending, they shouldn't compare. The relic work takes a lot of time and energy, so that's where a lot of that money goes. This thing just obviously, the same amount of time was not spent on the relic work, but it's still a hell of a guitar. So let's check out some sound examples and then we'll do a final overview. All right, I tried to do a little something here to accommodate everybody. We're going to start off with some classic rock, kind of crunchy amp sounds. We'll move on to a more modern, like high distortion kind of a sound, and then we'll finish off with some clean edge of breakup kind of stuff. What I did was I just picked a riff, I played it with the Murphy Lab first, and then I listened to that performance and I picked up the performance where it ended with the Girt Brothers. So this will be Murphy Lab first, Girt Brothers second. If you're looking at the Pro Tools window here, the Murphy Lab tracks are in yellow and the Girt Brothers are in bluish green, just like the guitar colors. So let's take a listen to our first riff here. I couldn't really hear a difference when those two tracks transitioned at all. Also, I got a brand new set of 10s on both of these guitars. I put them on a week before this test. So they were put on back to back. I kind of played them for about 5 minutes each day. And then here we are a week later and I did the recordings. So let's listen to the next one. I couldn't really hear a tonal difference there. That's sort of what I'm listening for is I have the pickup heights and the pole pieces all matched already. I'm mainly looking for sonic differences. Does one of them sound bassier? Does one of them sound treblier? Does one of them sound more muffly or, more muddy? Something like that. So far, I'm not hearing a difference. Let's keep going. Kind of hard to go wrong with the Gone Shootin' riff. I couldn't hear a difference there either. I mean, to me, that transition sounds like it's the same guitar. Yeah, sounds like the same guitar. Let's listen to this last crunch example and then we'll check out some modern stuff. Yeah, I cannot hear a difference there either. All right, let's check out some modern high gain stuff. I think it's illegal to do a junior shootout without including some Billy Joe Armstrong. So here we go. Okay, I couldn't hear a difference there at all. But does anyone else notice? Is it weird? Like, I recorded that in standard tuning. Does anyone else notice that that's off compared to the record? I feel like the record's a half step down. As soon as I heard it, I was like, oh, this doesn't feel like the right key. Maybe it was just me. Anyway, here's another one. I woke today. Man, I miss Chris Cornell. I don't know about you guys, but I miss Chris. What a loss. All right, one more option to check out here. So these are all going to be like clean edge of breakup type stuff. And I tried to like play some stuff that had some more ringing notes so we could hear the sustain a little bit. Let's check these out. Here we go. To me, something sounded a little bit different there. Yeah, maybe something about like the attack, the transients, maybe feel like a little bit bassier on the Girt Brothers. I'm just wondering if maybe I just played a little bit closer to the neck, a little further away from the bridge there. I mean, tonally, does it sound a little different? I was just hearing a little something on the attack that sounded a little bit, I was actually kind of liking the Girt Brothers a little bit better. But like I said, maybe I was just playing that thing just a little bit closer to the neck. Let's check out this next example here. The Black Crowes back on tour, everybody. To me, that sounded a little bit different too. I feel like, again, the Girt Brothers was just a little bit bassier. Like, not in like a necessarily better or worse way. It just sounded a little different, just ever so slightly. Let's check that out one more time. Maybe bass is not the right word. Maybe it's kind of more in the low mids. I might have just been playing a little bit closer to the neck. I mean, tonally, it's not a massive difference. Let's check out this last example and see if like it's 3 for 3 on the clean ones, because maybe you can just hear the differences better on the clean, which actually shouldn't be a massive surprise. I feel like overdrive usually hides stuff, except for noise. Haha. All right, here we go with the last example. I didn't notice any difference there at all. So I'm going to chalk up those other two to just a slight difference in hand position or something. I don't know. Maybe there is a very minor difference, but whatever we're talking about here, I think anybody, even with good ears, would have a hard time picking it out in an A/B test, which is sort of my criteria for, is there a difference? Can you pick it out in a blind test? So there's some examples. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you guys have any thoughts on any of these, or if you guys heard any tonal differences, let me know. To me, this is just an indicator, as usual, that the pickup is sort of the most important thing in electric guitar in terms of its tone. If you can take a $7,000 guitar and a $1,000 guitar, and you can put the same pickup in them and they sound this close, the pickup has to be the common denominator. So doesn't account for playability or anything like that, but to me, it's, you know, pretty obvious that the guitar that's 7 times the price doesn't sound anywhere near 7 times as good, let alone 5% better. Anyway, let's do some final thoughts and conclusions. All right, so in summary, I don't think that this guitar is 7 times the guitar this is, not even close. I think if we're talking about overall playability, I think this thing got 9/10 of the way there, which I think is pretty good. I think if we're talking about just overall quality and sort of look, aesthetic, attention to detail, I think that this thing's probably, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10, and this thing's the 10 out of 10. And so, yeah, I mean, not 7 times the quality difference. I have to say, I realize there's tons of guys that just think the Murphy Labs are, overpriced. And they probably are. I mean, I think the problem with buying a high-end guitar or like a boutique guitar is the cost just never scales. The guitar that's 7 times the price is not 7 times the guitar. It's not 7 times more playable. So that's the unfortunate reality about buying something boutique or something that's like more rare or more custom. But I would not trade this guitar for the Girt Brothers for the world. I just bought the Girt Brothers because I wanted to do some pickup shootouts, and I didn't want to change the pickup in this guitar every 2 weeks to do that. So I love this guitar. I love it as is. If this guitar never changes, I can spend the rest of my life happy with this guitar. I also think another thing that people overlook when it comes to buying an expensive guitar like this is the resale value. So I bought the Girt Brothers for $700. I don't know if I could get $700 back from it. Maybe I could. I got this for $4,500. I could guaranteed get $4,500 back for this thing. No problem. And who knows what's going to happen with the Murphy Lab in the future. The Murphy Lab might be around for 10 years and then it might go away. It might change into something else. Tom might leave. Who knows? So, one day this might be a semi-rare guitar. And frankly, if it never is, I don't really care. I don't want this thing to ever leave my collection. As I said, I'm a lifelong Strat guy. I got a Novo several years back, and that kind of changed my opinion on guitars. The Novo is hands down the best playing guitar that I own. And I can't get any of my other guitars to play as good as that Novo. But with that said, this thing and my Mulecaster, in terms of action and playability, they are right behind the Novo. This thing plays way better than either of my Strats, and one of my Strats is a custom shop Strat. So just the action, the playability, this thing is a straight stud, and it's just awesome when you plug this thing in to like a loud, distorted amp. Plugging this thing into a Marshall or like a dimed Tweed, you are instantly in heaven. So, I don't know. I guess confessions from like a recently converted one pickup guitar addict. So for all you guys that want a Murphy Lab, spend the money. If you have the money, spend the money. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. For those of you that don't have that kind of money, totally understandable. If you want a good option for under $1,000 that gets you the majority of the way there, check out the Girt Brothers. Dan is the nicest dude. I think he can be a little bit difficult to get a hold of, but it's worth it. So, reach out to him. Also, if you go check out the Instagram page, Only One Pickup, he has a bunch of Dan's work on there. Dan does some ridiculously good relic work. Like, this is not a proper example of Dan's relic work. I think this guitar is about 1.5 years old. It seems like some of the newer stuff that Dan from Girt Brothers has been doing is just out of this park. Like, really cool beat up looking relics. Multi-layer paint jobs, some really cool stuff. So check him out. Hope you guys like the video. If you do, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out a lot. I greatly appreciate it. And I will see you guys again soon. Probably with a P90 shootout in this guitar. We're going to shoot this Mojotone against a Lawler. So stay tuned for that.